Most people say they want to change their lives. They want to, quit the habit. They want to get that job. They want to change their life. They want to lose the weight, so on and so forth. But most people rarely ever do that. And so in this video, I wanted to break down some of the things that ultimately helped me change my life. And I've been there at several different points in my life, down at the very bottom and trying to work my way back up. Share some valuable tips and information that helped me do that. Um, but also maybe why most people never actually change. And it does tie and correlate to those three steps. So let's jump into it. Number one would be, and this might be the biggest one in reality, is that people do not face their reality. So what does that mean? It means wherever you're at in your current stage of life. In the last video that I made, we talked about seasons, and so whatever point in life you're at right now, you got to face the reality of where you're at. And it's hard to do that because really what gets challenged when we do that is our ego. No one wants to admit that they are overweight. No one wants to admit that they're broke. No one wants to admit that they've been failing in their marriage or in raising their children or in their relationships with their friends, family, whatever the case is. A lot of that stuff is very hard to face. And um, it the fact is that denial just feels way easier than facing the reality and the honesty behind that. And I've been there many times in my life. As recent as just 2 years ago, I was going through a lot of stuff with me and my wife, and all mostly stemmed from myself. And so that was the hardest thing for me, and that was, again, just not facing the reality of where I was at, not facing the reality that I had failed to do a lot of the things that as a man you're supposed to be doing. And most of that is, be there for your family in honesty. For me, it was a lot of, I was smoking marijuana, and I've been smoking for a long time. And, right now I'm going on 2 years clean, which is pretty an amazing accomplishment for myself, because it was a way that marijuana for me was always a way to basically hide myself from the reality that I was avoiding for years. Man, I for years I was in this state of mind and this position with myself here, and then when you're in it here, it affects here, and you don't ever become the person that you want to become. And for you, it might be alcohol. Maybe it's marijuana as well. Maybe it's video games. I struggle with video games as well. And so it can be many things. It doesn't have to just be one or the other. Maybe you're facing several different things at one time. And that's very possible too, because it was also happening to me. And so again, people don't face the reality. I most certainly did not face my reality. And it led me down a very dark path, depression many times. And, just overall leading a very unsatisfying life. No one wants to feel that way. And the longer you go, telling yourself that you're okay when you're not, you never know when that's going to, like, when it's going to really break down. It can break down 2, 3, 4, 5 years for some people because they're so good at holding it in. I held it in for, I mean, most of my life, realistically, since I was probably a senior in high school, really struggled with all that stuff. And, you know, really didn't start to make a lot of headway in my life with that stuff until I turned 27 and joined the Army National Guard. That's when things started to change a little bit, but then, I still carried a lot of that over through different points in my life. And, 35 now. And so, 33 years old, finally was able to stop a lot of this lifelong sabotage and stuff that I was doing to myself, ultimately hurting myself. And it all stemmed from just not facing reality. So um, don't wait to get brutally honest with yourself. And I know it's hard. Honestly, I bring this up all the time, but it's really as simple as like just writing things out. Write how you're feeling today. Write where you're falling short. Write these things out because it's a good first step. It's not the only step, of course. I did therapy. Had to work really hard in allowing myself to be vulnerable and, really being honest in the way that I could also be honest with my wife, because she was, most people know, like, when you're going through that stuff and they try to be there for you. But when you're going through that, it's just very hard to let yourself, be vulnerable to the point where you can actually speak on that honesty. So that would be number one. Number two, I would say that most people never create the identity shift. And so touching back on my story, the reason why, because I could go periods in my life where I could get better. I could be the person that I always dreamed that I could be. It started in high school, training for the sport of wrestling, but ultimately exercising kind of opened up a lot of different avenues for me, with just like how I want to. It started my journey of like knowing that I want to help people, not really sure exactly how I was going to help people. Could have never thought that it would have turned into a YouTube channel. Could never thought that become a certified health coach. I was a certified personal trainer for a period of time, but you've got to put yourself in the shoes of the person you want to become and then commit yourself to those daily actions, and those little small steps are what ultimately help you get there. And it's frustrating because in society where we're at now, it's about like, how fast can I get there? And if I don't get there as fast as I think I can or I should, you end up, it's kind of like a spoiled kid. It's like, oh, why am I not a millionaire, tomorrow or the next day? Why am I not a millionaire, yet? For weight loss, it's like, well, I've been working out for 3 weeks. Why have I not lost my 20 pounds yet? And that does tie into delayed gratification. I've done a video on that too. And that one was a hard one for me to learn too. So you've got to have that identity shift, because if you never fully commit to the person you want to become, you're always going to fall back into the person that you were. Again, for me, it was smoking marijuana, going periods of time, like for instance, the military, joined the military at 27, went, 16 weeks of training, met my wife during training, but then moved down, tried to move down to Milwaukee to be with her and all these things, and still smoked, very periodically. And then, it got bad for a period of time. Then I could, use motivation as a spark to kind of like catapult me out of that a little bit. And I would go maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 months stopping, and I'd come back to it because job was stressful, life is stressful, and that's just the way it is. But you've got to have things in place. And that's why I talk about systems all the time, because systems will create the habits and set the stage for you to be able to become that person. But you got to have patience through it, because it's not going to happen overnight. Likely not everyone has, you know I don't even want to say it's luck, because it's not luck. You create your own luck by being consistent, right? You establish these small victories every single day, and over the course of, let's just say you give yourself 12 months, right? 1 year of committing to the small daily actions that are going to ultimately help you become the person you're going to become. When you do that, you go 12 months of being consistent, I can almost guarantee you that you will also then have opportunities brought into your life. God works in mysterious ways, but those opportunities only happen for you when you're doing all the right things. If you're cheating yourself in any way, that's not to say that you might not ever get lucky. You might not ever find opportunities if you're not 100%, nose to the grindstone. There's certainly areas, in your season and while you're going through those shifts where you can have small little breaks, but not small little breaks as in doing the same old thing that you're doing before, right? If I would have said, 1 year clean for marijuana, I'm going to celebrate by smoking marijuana. That's not like that's counterproductive. It's counterintuitive to the idea of becoming the better version of yourself. So think about that stuff and how it correlates, because it always seems so easy, but it also, when you look at it from that perspective, 12 months is not a long time, but it's also a long time depending on your perspective, how you allow yourself to view that. So I would say give yourself 12 months of 1 year of solid, honest commitment to yourself, and create that identity shift for you and see what you become in a year. You won't be sorry, because even if you fail short of becoming the person that you're striving to be, you will most certainly, if you're being honest with yourself and you're committing yourself to this cause 100%, 110%, you're going to be better. And then it's okay, I got my 12 months under my belt. I feel fantastic, better than I ever have before. And then you just continue to compound that. most people do things for, like I said, take any example. I mean, exercise is a huge one because, I've been there before too. It's like, well, I've been doing this for 8 weeks and I don't really see the progress that I'm looking for. And it's like, well, 8 weeks in relative to what goal? Like if you're trying to lose 2 pounds, okay, you could probably do that in a month or so, depending on how much you commit to it. So there's a lot of give and take. There's a lot of what goes into this that requires relentless pursuit and also just a drive to, if that's the person you really want to become, what would stop you from doing that? And if you knew when you became that person what you could achieve, why would you not pursue that? Like I always, now that I'm kind of past all the stuff that I've been through in my life, I like to take a step back and say, okay, if I would have known at the time, like 24 years old, 23 years old, that this person, this version of myself could have accomplished all this if he just committed himself, man, my life would be completely different. And I'm not the kind of person to what if things, but that's the kind of perspective that you have to allow yourself to take a step back and view it as, because it's ultimately going to fuel you, right? If you look back on the last 10 years of your life and you say, really didn't do much, I'm a loser. That kind of talk it's sabotaging self-talk. And I've been probably, if you knew me back in the day, one of the worst people to ever do that. Like if you looked negative self-talk in the dictionary, my face would probably be in there. I remember this one time at basic training, we're getting towards the end and we're doing land navigation. Drill Sergeant Parks, who was an outstanding mentor for me, we were finishing up land nav, and I came to her. I was the platoon leader at the time, and I came to her just with like an update of where we were at, and I had a pencil in my ear, and it's just something really. This is stupid, but this is kind of it's the small things that make a difference. And so I went up to her. She noticed that I had a pencil in my ear, and she said, "Soldier, take that pencil out of your ear." I said, "Sorry, drill sergeant, I'm stupid." And she goes, "You're not stupid. Just take it out of your ear." And so that kind of talk, that kind of self sabotage, negative self talk will not help you in any way. So let's first of all, that little side tangent there, but just don't do that because it doesn't help you in creating this new identity shift that you're trying to pursue. So again, if you don't change your identity, you'll never change your life. That's just the reality of it. You can't be the same old person and expect to be the person you're trying to become. It just doesn't work. I tried it for many, many years and I stayed stuck in that same mentality. That's the same, level of income, the same relationship status, you know, not getting better at all. So, and the third one that I want to touch on with you guys is systems, right? I talk about this a lot. If you don't build systems, and you're only pursuing goals, you're ultimately going to fail because goals are goals are fantastic. I love setting goals. I love setting big goals. I love the fact that you can set big goals and you can hit those small goals, and use that as a propeller to help you get to where you want to be. But if you don't have systems, you're going to fall short. You have to design the process and what that looks like for you, and measure consistency. Don't measure it any other way. If you measure consistency, which an example would be like, all right, Monday through Friday, I worked out every day from whatever it is. Maybe it's a morning for you, 4 to 5. You give yourself an hour, and you did that every day. That's a great week. Um, and then you go the next week. All right, well, I only did 3 days, and then the next week, all right, now that I kind of fell back after a good week, now I need to try to hit 4 days, and then I need to try to hit 5 days again. And so it's okay if you don't hit that every single time, but you gotta be more consistent than not to help you continue to push towards that. And systems, like I said, you're building habits, you're building structure in your life that's ultimately going to allow you to put you in position to become that person and build over time. Replace your old habits with healthier ones. All these things is what systems are going to be able to help you do in the long run. So most people never change because of these three things. You don't face your reality, they don't change your identity, and they don't build systems. If you don't build all these three things together, I personally believe you'll fall short because I fell short for, a good chunk of my life, half of my life, half of my adult life so far, and it's not a good feeling. And if you're starting over in any way, shape, or form, I just want you to know it's possible if you commit yourself to these three things. And these aren't the only three things, of course. I mean, I'm not the only guy who's looking to help guide individuals who've been in this position before in their lives. There's a lot of good stuff out there. Use the resources at your disposal. The internet is, for all its faults, there's a lot of good out there, and I just encourage you to seek it. And, if you like this kind of content, feel free to check out more videos on my page. I got a lot of things that I feel like will help you. So, again, appreciate all your time. Looking forward to speaking to you in the next video.